In the data center, we have standards that tell us what things should do, how they interoperate, and how they work. ASHRAE has the standards for heating and air. We know what data center temperatures should be. The electronic manufacturers look at the ASHRAE standards to tell us what the operating temperatures for our equipment need to be within that data center. And then we have things like IEEE, TIA, ISO, and all of those, FCIA, to tell us how our stuff's going to interoperate together, and then Bixby does some standards now too. But the idea is, if it's compliant, it meets every critical specification of that standard required. It's totally compliant to that standard. If it's compatible, it meets some things in that standard, but it doesn't meet others. So understanding those two terms are definitely key to what we're going to do, because we want to make sure that we're compliant. We're not giving somebody something that's not going to work. And so compliant, like I said, literally means we do everything. Interoperability's been tested. We know that we are fully within the parameters. Anybody else can plug into this solution, and it will talk to that solution, and we know that there's not going to be a hiccup. And for years, you know, when I started in this industry, it was very closed, mainframe, AS System 36, AS400, and then open systems came along, and we fought really hard to get open systems. And it's really unfortunate that now a lot of the active electronics manufacturers want to be the only solution in your data center to the exclusion of everybody else. And so they've written proprietary things into their hardware. If you're okay with that, that's fine, but understand that they're probably not fully compliant to a standard. They're compliant in some cases and compatible in others. And when you lose interoperability, you use choice. If you remember when the tsunami hit Japan a few years ago, there were manufacturers that had 38-week lead times because all of their eggs were in that one chip manufacturing basket that got wiped off the planet. And, you know, not too many bosses, when they say, we need to implement this, wait 38 weeks, I gotcha, are going to say that's acceptable, because it just doesn't work that way. And so that compliance really helps us. And then vendor backstories are telling. So you want to make sure that your vendors work within the standards, understand the standards, have the standard stamps on their product, and will stand behind that. And then, you know, if your IT department is speccing something that's not standards compliant, they need to be able to defend that, because you lose all of your options at that point. And so, you know, you can purchase the standards, or like I said, there's lots of ways to Google around and find out at least the most important beefy parts of it. And, you know, ask for interoperability testing. See if you can do it yourself. A lot of the larger data centers have test and development environments. That's a great place to test stuff out. Make sure that it's going to work, it's going to do what you want to do. I know a lot of people that put in overhead fans in their data center to do manage hot aisles, and they realize that you can't carry on a conversation in the data center because they're so loud, and then they had hard drives fail because of the noise vibrations that they caused. So you want to be able to test everything, or at least go someplace where it's in an active environment, it's running, and you can see how it works. And then for IT, you know, you want to ask them about this specification and why it matters to them. If they're doing a sole source, they should be able to defend why they're doing a sole source and what that is. If it's interoperability to other sites, that's one thing. I know some data centers that are, for instance, a Cisco shop at one and a Juniper house at the other, because if there's a vulnerability, they don't want them to take down both data centers at once. I know some that want everything to be exactly same from data center A to data center B, so it's easier to work on. Of course, then you throw edge in there, that's going to change that a little bit. But it really has to be something that's defensible, not just because he took me out for the best steak dinner last week and now he's my friend and I can't tell him no. Every vendor should earn your business, and every vendor should be able to defend their solution. And they should also be able to tell you what happens if it fails. Any certification class you go through, for the most part, teaches you very ideal world from any vendor. What they don't tell you is what happens when it all upsets the apple cart. And we know that those apple carts do tip. That's some of the best training you can get, is when the apple cart flips and you have to fix it. So here's an example of picking different solutions for This is a camera study for a parking lot, but just to give you an idea, when we start looking at all of the pieces and parts, there's an 80% delta between one solution and another. 80%. Both provide the exact same functionality. The security cameras work from point A to point B. One is full of repeaters and transceivers. The other one does not, so a lot of the complexity and risk comes out. But at the end of the day, we still see the picture on the cameras. So which one is going to be more cost effective? It's obviously going to be the one that's less expensive. And I think that in this industry, we've gotten so used to other people telling us what to do that we forget to really check what our options are. And you should be doing that often at trade shows like this, on the internet, at webinars, whatever you can find, even, local chapters of like 7x24 AFCOM. Ask your peers what they're using. That's one of my favorite tricks when you're evaluating a vendor. Go out to their website and look at their old press releases. And then call those companies that implemented their solutions years ago. Ask them if it worked. Ask them if there was a problem. There's always a hiccup, or there's at least a potential of a hiccup, but how somebody responds to it is really what you want to know, and how they're going to have your back and how it's going to work. Because those aren't going to be the people they list as a reference on their RFQ documents. Those are going to be the people that you get to find out the nitty-gritty about and find out what really happened.